Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So it's Friday night at the Browns household, and tonight is just a really relaxed night, waiting for my husband to come home. So I just thought this would be a good video to share. And while I love to share information to help persons come into Canada and just like raw information, I also think it's important to share my journey as well and to serve as an encouragement to others. So I was just kind of reminiscing on life here over the past few years of coming to Canada, and so I wanted to share this part of my journey with you guys. And it's a testimony. My entire life is a testimony, but more so my journey, my immigration journey in Canada is a testimony. So I hope somebody will find this useful and motivating. So stay tuned on this video and we'll have a chit chat. Hey guys, so we are back to talk about my testimony. Like I said before, I have on different clothes, but I don't really have on different clothes. I just went on the road, so I put on my sweater. We're up in Centennial tonight. That's the school that I went to here in Canada. So a little background. So I came to Canada. I went to Centennial College in Toronto. So I graduated with my bachelor's in chemical engineering, and then I came to Canada. I was working back home, but the aim was really to come to Canada because I wanted to work in the pharmaceutical or in cosmetics industry. We didn't have any plans back home that does pharmaceutical, and so I thought, you know what, let me come to Canada. And so I'm going to do biotechnology, and that would allow me to have some knowledge on pharmaceutical because my background, which is my degree, did not afford me the opportunity to learn about pharmaceutical or a lot about biology. So I wanted to do that as a bridging the gap, and then I work my way into a job. So fast forward, I started to volunteer, and that's how I got this t-shirt. It's funny, everything is kind of lining up. So I volunteered. I love volunteering, so of course I came. I didn't get a job like almost immediately, and so I started to volunteer, and I loved it. I was volunteering, I was helping students, I was helping out at orientation, and it was great. It was an opportunity to see the culture, to experience the school, and just full-blown, I'm that kind of person where wherever I go and whatever school I'm at, I want to be involved. And you know, volunteering, a lot of people look at it like, I'm not gonna volunteer, I'm not gonna work for free. But when I started to volunteer, I was talking to the head of the CCSAI, not CCSAI, what was it called again? Anyways, yes, Centennial International Student Association. So I was talking to the person that was leading it at the time, and I was saying to her, I need a job, I need a steady job. Do you know if the college is hiring? And she was like, I don't know yet, but if they are, I'll let you know. And it's funny how 2 weeks before that, there was a call, like an emergency call, that they needed help at the office and if persons could go in and help. And I think it was like closer to December, and so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go in, I'll help. I went to the office, I was there helping out. I met this lady there and a lot of people that worked in the international office, and so I was there just helping out. And like a few weeks after, the lady that I was volunteering with, she was like, oh, there's an opportunity opening up in the international department and we'll be taking applications. I can send over your resume and see where it goes from there. So I did that, and lo and behold, I got an email, come for the interview. I went there and I'm like, you know what, this is like an office job. And from I know myself, I've never ever 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 like done office job or any business subjects ever. So almost immediately I was like, you know what, I'm taking advantage of any opportunity. If I get to work at the school, I'm studying, I don't have to pay any extra bus fare, I don't have to kill up myself to go anywhere else. So I did the interview. It's funny, when I got into the room, the lady that was interviewing me was one of the ladies that I was helping out, and she recognized me. And the other lady, who is the manager, she was Jamaican. So you know, I'm Jamaican, she's Jamaican. So that's, I was like, yes, thank God. And it was a good interview. Then I got the job, and I was working at Centennial and in a project management capacity, and I loved it. I really loved it. I did not expect that I would love it, and I got more and more responsibilities, and I was there. I got a new contract, the whole 9 yards. Anyways, fast forward, it was a contract for a year. By the time I finished school, the contract would be ending as well. So I was like, okay, this was such a great opportunity. Maybe I would stay here. And even though my plan was, you know, to come to Canada and still do the whole engineering, blah blah blah, at this time I already decided that I was switching my program for biotechnology, because I thought that 1 year was good enough. I got enough information, enough knowledge, and enough resources that I can use, and I can work in the capacity. But I saw this new thing, it was project management, that I did not know I had in me. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do project management. Side note, guys, you know, I always like to give you guys information, but side note is, when be flexible when you come to Canada. And who knows, sometimes we venture out of our comfort zone, and when we venture out of our comfort zone, we find that we're good at something else that we just did not know at all. So I'm saying be flexible. Anyways, at this time I did project management, I was finishing, and my contract at Centennial College was also ending. So I said to the manager at the time, I was like, well, what's gonna happen? Am I gonna get an extension? Blah blah blah. The entire department, there was some shifting going on, and she was like, because of the shift, they don't know, not right now, but further on, you know, a few months down the line, she'll give me a call, and that time they can take me on. Even though, another side note for international students, so even though I would be on a 3-year postgrad work permit. At the time, I don't know if the stipulations have changed. I don't know what changed as it relates to that. But at that time, my husband was on his work permit. And so I needed to when I finished school, I needed to get a job and show 3 pay stubs, which is a month and a half, for him, in order for him to get his work permit extended. And so I was like, I'm not gonna sit around for the next 3 months to kind of like, oh, let's just sit around and have a good time. Let's, you know, I was like, no. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna sit around. And so I went into the office and I said, we need to decide what we're gonna do now, because it's either yay or nay, because I am planning my life. And so she was like, probably. And I'm like, at this point, this is all about my life and also my husband. And at the end of the day, I came to Canada not because I am, you know, dying or I'm suffering at home or anything, but I came here for betterment. And if it means that I will have to sit around and wait for you to decide, I would prefer to go home. And I told her that straight up, because I was like, God, if God wants us to stay here, he will make a way, and we will gladly go back to our homes if that's not the case. And anyways, that didn't work out, so I got to work, because I'm the type of person, I have a goal in mind, and I don't want to put my husband in any precarious situation because he just got a good job. and great benefits. And I'm like, listen, I'm not going to make him lose his work and have to, you know, dolly back to try to find something else. So I'm like, you know what, I am going to be applying. I was still in school at the time, but I'm like, listen, if I can get a 50 on these tests, I'm good. Patrick going to be listening to this and be like, girl, you know, you won't be getting any 50. But still, in my mind, even though I was still getting the grades, my focus was no longer on, oh, I needed A or whatever. You know what? Let me not say that. Let's come back. That was still my focus, because I'm a type of person, whatever I'm doing, I like to give my 120%, or it no make sense my body do it. So I was like, all right, let's get to work. We're gonna update the resume. And as a side note, my resume at Centennial College, and that was, Centennial has a lot of good programs outside of like studying. They have a lot of good programs. So when I just came to Canada, I booked like 3 sessions with different persons just to look at my resume. Yeah. And so everybody will tell you this, no, this. Of course, everybody think come together, you'll have a perfect resume. And so by the time I was done with Centennial, I had one final co-op course, like a work thing course, to review my resume, do interview. At that time, your girl was pro, because when the teacher reviewed it, she didn't really have no comments. So my resume was ready, and I'm like, I'm ready. Let's see if we can get a project management job. And for right now, we're not even going to look for any big job, because the aim is to get me a job, to get my husband. But at the same time, I still want a good job. So I said, all right, let's do this. So I went ahead and I submitted the application, and I got a job. I was out of there in a job. I finished school on the Friday. I was in a job on the Monday. Anyways, my husband was fine. I was fine. The job was the worst. Was the worst place. Yeah, it was the worst place I've ever worked in my entire life. But that's a different story for another day. After a while, I decided I'm going to take some time off, because this work is too toxic, and I'm going to really get serious. And this is where the testimony really starts. And I'm going to get really serious. I'm going to believe in God. And sometimes believing in God means that believing the Lord Jesus means that stepping out of that comfort zone, stepping out of that box, and believe that He'll take you through. And so I took some time. Of course, COVID was gonna happen. Oh, and I took the time. But nonetheless, even though COVID was going on, I was full-fledged. I knew what I want at this point. At this point, project management was still something that I love to do, absolutely love to do. But just applying for a job as a project manager or project coordinator would have 1,000 applications on Indeed, and it's not like you're just looking one place. Like I was never the person that came to Canada and be like, oh, the work needs to be right there. I was like, if the work is way over there, I'm gonna go. But I was still not getting any calls, and I'm like, you know what, I need to pivot. I came here to work in pharmaceutical. And I was at church one Sunday, and we had a pastor visiting, and he was talking about his son and how he got a really good job after school, and he had such faith in God and everything. And the essence of what the man was saying, the pastor was basically telling me, because at this point God is talking to me, why take a bucket of water from the ocean when I'm giving you the entire ocean? And in my head, I started to stop living myself, stop applying for these mediocre positions, believe and believe in myself, and start executing. Anyways, I applied, I got through to this job in a processing lab, and I love that job. I learned so much about the Canadian pharmaceutical side. I learned a lot about processing and some of the things that I did in school, like using mixing tanks and so forth. I got to embrace that. I got to know about change controls, some things that you guys probably don't know if you're not in that field. But essentially, that was great. However, I was still not getting the pay that I want, and I still needed more exposure, because after a year and some, it was like I knew exactly what was going on in the lab, and I was kind of there, you know, being like, yeah, this is how it's done, this is how this machine is fixed. I would pull on machines, put them back together. I knew what was going on, and if I go back right now, I will know what was going on when I was writing SOPs, BPRs, you name it. But there was more, and I believe that there was more for me. So I started to look again, but this time I was intentional, because remember I said I wanted to work in pharmaceutical, cosmetics. Oh, and I also love wastewater. I thought, what would be the easiest transition for me? I like environmental engineering, anything to do with the environment. I really like that. And my final year project at UTech in Jamaica was on waste management. So I'm like, okay, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be strategic. Forget Indeed. I'm not gonna be looking at the list of all the companies hiring. But what I am going to do, I'm going to look at companies that are doing what I would like to do. And then I'm going to find email contacts and I'm going to reach out for those people. So God has been so good, because when I went onto LinkedIn, there was a couple companies, well, but when I typed in wastewater, when I type in water management, there was this one company, and it's the company that I work now, that popped up. And when they popped up, I was like, okay, not too bad. I went onto their LinkedIn page and I started to scroll through, and I'm like, interesting. They don't only do wastewater, but they do pharmaceutical, they do food and beverage, they do all sorts of industry, because it's an engineering consulting firm. And I'm like, in the back of my head, I was still thinking, these people are not gonna look at my measly little resume with barely any, with no experience in that capacity and not a lot of years of experience. So, you know, that was the human side of me talking. But I was like, you know what, I'm gonna have confidence and I'm gonna do this. Found a company, I went onto the LinkedIn, and when I was like, okay, let me see if there's a black person there, because my resume will have Jamaica on it, and so automatically they will assume that I'm black. And by the way, no, not everybody in Jamaica is black. So I went on, submitted my resume, and then 2 weeks later, I submitted my resume. There was no job open. There was no job, but like I said, I was intentional about what I was doing. There was no job. So I went in, submitted an email to say, hey, this is me. I am willing to do all of this, and I have these skills that I'm sure would be useful in your company. You know, I submitted it, and I just submitted to their info at, you know, beep beep beep. 2 weeks later, I got a call. Hi, this is blah 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 from blah blah blah. Is this Sanjay? And I'm like, yeah. I'm gonna show you guys. God is so intentional about his people, because when I got that call, if I was on the road and driving, I would not remember that the company's name, because it was only one company that I did this with. And I said, okay. I drove up in the driveway, parked, put the car in park, ready to come out. Bam, the phone rang. Answer the phone. When I look, is the person. When they said the company name, I went on my history almost immediately while I was talking, bam, 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 bam. And he said, oh, this is me, da, da, da. Do you have 15 minutes? I'm like, yeah, for sure, I do. And then the first question, what do you know about the company? Right away, I have everything. So I'm like, you know what, this. Anyways, that was like the first screening. So then he gave me an interview, and I'm like, oh my God. Because my thing was always, give me an interview. If I get an interview, 99% chance that I'll convince them. But I was like, yes, I got the interview. This is it. And just a side note, I didn't sit and I didn't wait for them to post a job. I didn't wait for some random jobs, and I didn't look below what I was. And this was just God. Like literally, like I said, the pastor came to church, and this was why I was moving forward. Anyways, did the interview. I was doing the interview. It was at the time it was a virtual interview. And when I did the interview, believe you me, it was the hardest interview. I mean, the questions were tough. The questions were so tough, and they weren't smiling. For me, I felt defeated. And because I was home and my husband was working from home at the time, he was in another room, and when he heard how difficult the questions were, I mean, there was one question that I baffled so bad on. Like, I was there and like, what do I say? If I say the wrong thing, this will actually make or break my interview. And I remember even at the end, the person that was interviewing me was like, oh, remember we had skipped that question for you to think about it. Remember, I'm still answering questions, you know, guys. And to think they are like, oh, remember I gave you one to think about. He didn't give me a day, you know, he didn't give me an hour. I'm still here talking. Anyway, luckily God was on my side. I came up with something and I did answer. Anyways, the guy said, all right, you know, that's it. Thank you for your time. And I was saying, my husband was behind the camera and he was like, woosahing me, like, whoo, breathe, smile, breathe. And I kept my face. I was pleasant, but they were tearing me apart. When I finished the interview, I was in tears. I was bawling. I did a bawl because honestly, I did fully stressed out. So we went to walk and then we came back and I spoke to my mom, and my mom was like, girl, if they're gonna be that mean. But you know, I really wanted the opportunity, and it was a big company. Anyways, a week, I feel like it was a week, I was driving from work and I saw the man's number because I saved his name and his number. And my husband was on the phone with me. I was talking to him, and I was driving home. And then I said, oh, sorry, babe, I'm getting a call. It looks like I got the job. This was my response. I wasn't thinking, what is he calling me about? I was like, babe, it looked like I got the job. So when I got the job as a seated role. So in consulting, so it's an engineering consulting firm, and so of course I'd be working in a process engineering consultant position capacity. And so when I got the call, because it's a consulting firm, they do different companies, so they wanted me to do a seated role. So a seated role would be one that you are not mobile, moving to different projects, but you'd be seated at their facility. And I'm like, babe, I don't really like to be secluded from my actual company, and I don't think I really like this. Anyway, long and short of the story is that one fell through. So even though I really wanted to leave where I was at my company, I decided that, okay, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna just move on to another company because I got another offer to be a technical operations specialist at another pharmaceutical facility. When I got to that facility, upon being there for 2 months, I got a call from the same person from the company, And he was like, hey, we had another opportunity open. It's not a seated role this time. Do you want to come in for an interview? I'm like, oh my god, this is not the perfect time. I'm 2 months into a new role. What am I going to do? Anyways, I was there and I said to him, you know what, I'm just gonna stay here. I'm done here already. You know, maybe in a year or so I'll give you a call and we can work something out. On the Friday, I told him this, and Saturday, Sunday, you best believe I could not live with myself, because I'm like, this is a big deal. This is what you have been waiting for. What are you doing? Why are you turning this down? So Monday morning, bright and early, I sent him an email to be like, oh, I changed my mind. Could you please reconsider me? And he was like, I got no answer. Bing, bing, bing. On like Tuesday, no answer. So I called. I'm like, hey, blah, 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 blah. He's like, oh, I've been on vacation, but I'm back at work tomorrow. I'll set up the interview with the person, blah, 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 blah. Did the interview the Thursday. He's like, oh, in 2 weeks or whatever, you'll hear from us. Monday, you got the job. So that is to say that, guys, one, bet on God, and always bet on God before you bet on yourself. And two, don't let anybody in this entire world tell you what you can or cannot do, because when I came, I heard all sorts of horror stories about, oh, people from outside, they can't get jobs in engineering. There's no engineering job in Toronto. There's no engineering job in Ontario. All of that, none of that. Second of all, when they called me for the job and be like, this is what I'm paying you, I'm like, what about this? And they matched that. Lo and behold, they pay for a couple things, which I don't need to get into. But even more so, you even get bonuses, which I don't need to get into. But the fact of the matter is, no matter where you go in this world, like in Canada, there's some place for you and you can figure out where that place is. Don't limit yourself because people say, oh, you can't get a job as this or you can't get a job as that. Mark you, as an engineer, I will have to do 4 exams. Yeah, I already went through all of that jazz. Probably if you're an engineer and you want to figure out how, I can tell you how, because I'm in the process right now. But for now, what I'm saying is I'm working in this capacity not because of, you know, my skills that I thought I had for the job, which I rightfully did, but it's because of God's goodness, and it's because I stepped out of my comfort zone and I decided that I'm going for it and I'm going to do it. So don't be afraid and don't restrict yourself. Don't come here with a limited flexibility, and don't let people on social media or anywhere tell you what your limits are, because you know what, the only limits that we have are the limits that we set on ourselves. And I can tell you guys, bet on yourself, bet on God, be flexible, be willing to do things that make you uncomfortable, and be willing to go out there and do what nobody else is doing. I could have sat down and wait for them to post a job. And to be honest, like if I had delayed that opportunity because I was like, oh, I told him that I don't bother, and I wasn't convinced enough to go back to him and ask him to say, you know what, I made a wrong decision. What do you think? Then even though I said a year later, he left the company, so I couldn't even call him back, you know, and that would have been my opportunity right there. Don't be afraid to take opportunities, especially if you're young. And even if you're old, don't be afraid. Like I said, the first thing is to bet on God. Bet on God. Jesus is such a big part of my life and our life as a family, but bet on him. I can guarantee you that he won't fail you. Number 2, bet on yourself. Believe in your abilities, believe in your skills. And I feel like this, I will have to chop this up in 2 because there's also a second part. So I'm going to chop it up in 2 so that I can explain the testimony in full length. when I started at the company, I started as a junior. Of course, I'm rightfully a junior, but it's an engineering consulting firm. And oh, I didn't even mention this to you guys, but they do pharmaceuticals. So my first projects were in pharmaceutical capacity, and it's at one of the biggest pharmaceutical plants in the world. And you know, of course, it's in Canada and it's in Toronto. And I started as a junior, and then I worked my way up where now I'm working on my own projects. And so if I didn't bet on myself, to be honest with you guys, I don't know where I would be. Of course, I would be in a job, but the flexibility that I have, the amount of knowledge that I've gained over the past years, months, over a year, are beyond my wildest dream. And it's definitely what I dreamt that I would do in Canada, but it almost seemed impossible when I first came, because people are like, oh, in Toronto you won't get an engineering job. 1, 2, who's gonna come look for you from Jamaica? But believe in yourselves. Believe in yourselves. There is no limits on us, and allow no one to put limits on you, right? I think this video is gonna be super duper long, so if you are watching, you're probably watching part 2. I don't know if you're gonna be watching part 2 or part 1, but that's part of my testimony, and I just wanted to share that part of my journey with you guys so that you have an idea. I have so much other testimonies, but I don't know if I'm gonna bore you guys, so probably don't, you know, let me know in the comments below if you would like to hear more about different things that I've done, and if you'd like to know about, you know, how to become an engineer in Canada. And if you want to ask more about my company, that's fine as well, or my journey there. That's also a testimony. I just finished an assignment recently in food and beverage, so that was also a great opportunity for me. But to sum up this video, thank you guys for sticking around and watching it. I know it's super long, but there's so much different points to the story. But I hope this encouraged somebody that if you're in this current position, if you're here in Canada and you can get, you know, a job that you want, of course we are not gonna come, a lot of us don't come and get the jobs that we want immediately, but don't be disappointed if you don't, but just believe in yourself and do what everybody else is not doing. Get out of that box that we often put ourselves in and fly high. It's funny, before I decided to do this video, I decided and then I was like, I'm being lazy. On Netflix I clicked it and it was showing Dr. Kabby, which is a doctor from India or somewhere that came to Canada and couldn't get a job in his field. This is a very popular story here, but wherever you go, whatever province you go, whatever city you go in, if you are determined enough, you will find a job that is willing to pay you and one that you will love. So bet on yourself, and I hope you guys enjoy this one. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so when I post a video, even though, you know, you'll be the first to be notified, I'm sure, and you can watch it. So as always, thank you guys, and peace.